We are the flood. I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. It has been 1 week since this show and comedian Cliff Cash, who I stole that tagline from, organized the largest protest against this illegal administration since Donald J. Trump took office. This is not a podcast. This is a movement. Please, if you are not already subscribed, subscribe to the Jessica Denson channel where you are watching this. I want to thank you guys for getting me over the 100,000 subscriber mark last week as we were streaming that massive protest of thousands of veterans and truly patriotic Americans on the National Mall. I started this movement with Cliff and Josh and a small group of patriots in the bitter cold in early January, 14th now. And that movement became thousands, the largest protest against this presidency, with an unequivocal message that he must be removed from office last week. That is the power of one, the power of the right idea, and the power of not doubting for 1 second our power when we come together and grow. So I am so grateful to you. You on this show, on Lights On, made it happen. You answered our calls for fundraising. You put together the action, the messages, you got yourself to DC. You drove from all corners of this country. I met so many of you. It was absolutely beautiful. And my heart is full of gratitude for you showing up and taking back your power last week on 3/14. I cannot say thank you enough. And I'm going to take a healthy portion of this show today to correct some narratives that are out there. And I thought about whether or not I was going to do it because it's something that's kind of like tiresome sometimes to have to correct things all the time and take your place and take your stand. But it's really a matter of respect. And it's not for me. It's actually for you that I'm doing this, and in honor of Women's History Month. So we're going to take a minute to do that. Also, of course, as you know, we have Nathan Taylor of the Election Truth Alliance coming up on the show. He is going to be unveiling exclusively on Lights On, which, by the way, is the first place that platformed Nathan Taylor. Some of you have come to me and said, you got to get Nathan Taylor on from ETA. Some of you don't know, but way back in January 5th, late night, he was one of our allies originally in the 14th Now movement, and we were the first to platform Nathan. Very happy to have him back today and unveil some groundbreaking analysis of data coming out of Pennsylvania. Now, if you watch Lights On, that we are crystal clear about the very real likelihood, and it's unthinkable, it's truly unthinkable, that we are living through this assault on democracy, this defiance of court orders, this hijacking of our federal agencies by an unelected billionaire, the deportation of American citizens who have exercised their First Amendment rights. I'm going to talk about a few of them in a minute too. While this man, there is overwhelming and growing evidence that this man did not win this election. In a country ruled by the people, for the people, where our elections are supposed to reflect the will of the people, that we are dealing with this assault on democracy by a man who we have growing evidence did not win. I've been on this since November. We should not be in this situation. We should have had the clarity from everybody in the so-called democracy space to tackle this subject before it was too late. We should have had the clarity of our law enforcement agencies. This should not be the job of an independent volunteer operation like ETA to get to the bottom of this. But they are getting to the bottom of this, and that's why I am happy to continue to platform them. We are living in a fantasy land, in magical thinking, if we think we're going to have an election in 2 years or 4 years that is not manipulated and that is fair, and that we can even wait till that moment. Magical thinking 101. We are not waiting. We are taking action now. So, as I mentioned, I'm so grateful for you. So incredibly grateful for you. And I wanted to address a few things about last week. It's interesting. We organized this. Me, Cliff, and Josh organized this. None of us are veterans ourselves. We would have loved to have the involvement of actual veterans organizations as we planned and put this event together. But we didn't actually have the support of official veterans organizations in the Democratic space. We had the wonderful support of the Sons of Liberty, progressive social media community and Discord community. So massive shout out to Sons of Liberty. We had the most official that came on board with us was a woman named Susan Schnall, who is the president of Veterans for Peace. But we didn't actually have any veterans organizations organizing this. And I've had to deal with in the days after this event, some reminders of just this subtle but pernicious and really poisonous misogyny that runs really deep and is such a ugly thing that I think we have to call out and we have to confront. And I'm going to share this for you. I'm sharing this with you for visibility because I know I'm not the only woman who deals with this. And I know I'm not the only woman in history who's dealt with this. And I know there's many women out there right now whose work is not being credited, who are being shadowed, who are being, who men or others are jealous of, and they try to discredit their efforts. What we did last week was truly, truly extraordinary. We did it in spite of these headwinds. And I'm going to put this up on the screen. This is from a group called Common Defense, and this was shared with us from Tim at Sons of Liberty. He said, one of the complaints we fielded from Common Defense was, and this is a direct quote, we know all the big players in the veteran space and we can't figure out who's organizing it. So we won't back/promote it. The only person we have tied to it has been a woman who worked for the Trump campaign and then left after filing a harassment complaint. We're concerned about the safety and potential negative impacts of this event, to be honest. Kind of unbelievable. Now that, if you know Lights On, you know who I am. And you know that I have literally been in this fight for 7 years. I filed a lawsuit 7 years ago, pro se, and even to say it's even a harassment complaint is such a inaccurate minimization of what I experienced. It was a gender-driven character assassination. It was not sexual harassment per se, as you come to think of that term. It was a all-out character assassination, a sabotage, gender-driven. And I didn't just pursue my own grievance. I pursued a legal fight that ended up invalidating every single illegal non-disclosure agreement that Donald Trump used to silence his staffers for life. I put my own claims on the back burner. I pursued a legal path, not on behalf, I'll be honest with you, not on behalf of the Trump staffers. They didn't deserve it. I did it on behalf of the American people to make sure there was no barrier between the American people and the truth that they deserve to know. And I have sacrificed 7 years of my life for that. And I have done it without fanfare. I have had major, major court victories well before all of the other court victories that you heard of during the Trump administration. I came out against this man in 2017, before Michael Cohen, before Anthony Scaramucci, before George Conway, before all of the other men, the ex-Trump men that have massive platforms and whose names you know well and have been platformed endlessly on social media. When my court victories came out, people like Lawrence O'Donnell and Ari Melber had the nerve to report on my court victories without saying my name, without even using a gender pronoun. They even referred to me as this plaintiff or just ignored the fact that a human being was involved at all. So I've dealt with this for 7 years, and I have at times addressed it. If you watch me back on Midas Touch when I was there, you know I had to, from time to time, address it there. And it's really tiresome. I will be honest with you, it's tiresome. And it's not something you want to have to do. But I have done it periodically because if we don't call it out, then we are normalizing that behavior. We're saying it's acceptable to erase people, not just to erase me, but to erase the impact of what I have done. People don't relate to things. They relate to other people. You have to have a face and a name to make a connection, and especially when a woman is involved. How dare you? How dare you attempt to erase who she is, her name, and her contributions. So because of that shadowing that I have endured for 7 years while I've been fighting like hell, but not platformed, not mainstreamed, I organize a major protest with Cliff and Josh, who, by the way, we didn't sleep for 3 weeks, literally did not sleep. I mean, if you looked at us, only difference between me and Cliff that day is I was wearing makeup, but we did not sleep. I did not sleep 1 second the night before 3/14. Did the run of show, hired everybody that showed up that day, made sure that everybody was safe, every last thing. The buck stopped with me for that event that went up on 3/14. And Cliff was a rock star promoter, by the way, and had total ownership of the weekend that continued with the media and Heritage Foundation. So to discredit a woman because a woman who has accomplished amazing things for this democracy, and 7 years later, as she is organizing a massive protest in honor of our veterans, welcoming any veteran community that would come to our side and align with us, she is reduced to a woman who filed a harassment complaint and then left the Trump campaign. Shame on you, Common Defense. Shame on you. Some of our co-organizers had some choice words for them that I will not repeat today. But Common Defense, as I've heard, is basically a fundraising arm of the Democratic Party. You guys know I have so many criticisms for the Democratic Party right now, because if you're messaging that you're pro-democracy, if you're messaging that you're anti-fascism, if you're messaging that you're going to be the ones that can save us, you damn well need to put in the work. And so far, I can count on one finger the people in the Democratic Party that are doing what's needed to do right now, and that's Al Green. So in spite of that, I would have been happy to welcome Common Defense. And just think, we had thousands. We had the largest protest since Donald Trump took office. Imagine how much larger it could have been if we had Common Defense, if we had the DNC Veterans Council, who I invited as well, and who did not get back to me. Imagine if we had some of the other groups, who I won't necessarily name, but who were also invited to be part officially of this event. Just think about that. Think about who's in this space actually taking action and who is not. I just want to, for the record books, and we're going to highlight some other women or a woman that I thought of particularly this week as I was thinking about my own experience. And I want to put her on the map in case people do need to be reminded of her. But I'm just going to play a couple clips because this is really so beautiful. We were less than 100 people in the freezing cold in January. One of my co-organizers, Josh Johnson, came to me and said, Jessica, we got to do this again on 3/14. I had the opportunity to speak at a President's Day event organized by 5051 back in February. And this is I'm going to give you a little bit of the backstory of how last Friday came to be. So here's the first part of it.
Jessica Denson. I've spent the last 7 years. My name is Jessica Denson. I've spent the last 7 years of my life defeating the tyranny of Donald Trump in the courtroom. And I led a protest here on January 3rd to 5th to try to stop the certification of this illegal president who inhabits that house in violation of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Now, this is not an official announcement, but 314 is 14.3 in reverse, and I would like to have on 314 this kind of showing in Washington, D.C., in protest of this illegal presidency, to say we are not going to let democracy die on our watch. Thank you all so much for putting yourself out here. Please join me again on 314, and stand up every single day to reject this illegal presidency. God bless America. God bless America.
So we had that showing and then some, probably 3 to 4 times that showing last Friday. Here is Cliff. I wanted to show you Cliff explaining how this came to be, and a few of our other esteemed speakers. I couldn't show them all to you, but of course the whole stream is on the Jessica Denson YouTube channel from last week. Definitely check it out. Here are a few highlights, including Cliff describing how this event came to be. Here's for anybody. Oh, and by the way, in the theme of correction, we've had some wonderful coverage, not nearly enough. But I was so grateful. To see the coverage that we got emphasize that this protest was about Donald Trump's removal from office. As far as I was concerned, that is what distinguished us. We were emphasizing that what is required in this moment is any and all constitutional action for Donald Trump's immediate removal from office. We're not just complaining about those actions. We are demanding action. And the outlets that did report on us, Stars and Stripes, NBC4 Washington, Newsweek, WTOP, WUSA 9, News to Share, Newsweek, and the Washington Examiner all largely picked up on that messaging. And I was so grateful for that. You can see the full list at nowmarch.org/press. It's nowmarch.org/press, and you see a partial list there up on your screen. But one of the things that I saw reported incorrectly was by Rachel Maddow. And I was happy because she reported on us. She actually reported on us the day before and the day of. But both times, this is what she said. She said it was a veterans protest, a veterans march organized by and for veterans. And like I said, unfortunately, it was not organized by veterans. It was very much organized for veterans. But that distinction is important. It's important to understand who is doing the work. It's not just a matter of credit. It's a matter of respect and setting the record straight. So I'm doing that today, and I'm going to give you Cliff Cash and a few of our other amazing speakers and a little ending from myself on how this event came to be.
Jessica and I were on a YouTube Live with Tim, with Big Sarge on the Sons of Liberty channel, and we were talking about what needs to happen. The conversation was, what needs to happen? What can people do? What do people need to see? And Jessica was talking about planning this protest on March 14th, 3/14, to further the discussion about 14-3. A little play on numbers, if you will. And then I talked about what I thought needed to happen. The American people need to see United States veterans standing up against fascism. The American people need to know that tough, brave veterans do not support fascism. And these fascists in power needed to see it so that they know whatever it is that you think you're about to do to us is going to be a lot fucking harder than you think it is. So we decided to make this day a march, a 14-3 protest, and a veterans protest, and here we are.
This is not a fight we can afford to lose. We are not going to wait for the next election. We are not going to wait for the courts to save us. We are taking action now.
What we need right now is a lot of people, a lot of somebodies to do something to save our country. I'm encouraged when I see this. This is encouraging. So how fitting on 3/14, we are here gathered. And there's a clause in the Constitution somewhere, 14-3, to remove Donald Trump. Let's get some people with some backbone to stand up and let's get that done.
We're not going to let squatter in the White House, Mr. Krasnov Bone Spurs, overrule the sacrifice of all of you for our Constitution. A Constitution that empowers we, the people. Those fearful cowards in that building behind us don't hold the power. We do. We are going to demand, starting right now and never letting it go until it happens, that every constitutional means be used immediately to remove Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Elon, whoever the hell, Musk from power.
Man, what a feeling to be up there with all of you. You know, some I got a chance to meet a lot of you. I wanted to just put up some of the pictures. Some of you guys showed me your merch, which was incredible. I got to meet incredible people like Susan Schnall, as I mentioned, the president of Veterans for Peace. She was court-martialed during Vietnam for her anti-war protests. Finally got to meet my friend Harry Dunn, and my good friend for many years joined us, Carlos. You loved him. You heard a clip of him there. By the way, Carlos is planning another major protest in Washington, D.C. on D-Day, June 6th, D-Day, June 6th, and across the country. I will be part of that event in D.C. To be honest with you, it feels like a million years from now, but he's doing it with the time between us to try to gather a lot of momentum. So if you can, put that on your calendars right now. Join us in D.C. on June 6th for D-Day. You know, we had these continuing protests over the weekend, of course, spearheaded by Cliff Cash, unbelievable crowds at Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. Absolutely incredible energy there all weekend. Massive shout out to Cliff for really taking the helm on those. It was truly an extraordinary movement and moment to be part of. I cannot thank you enough. I cannot thank our veterans enough, and I cannot thank everyone enough who came and showed up to stand for our Constitution, to take back your power, and to say we are not going to wait. We're not going to wait. Just to mention a few things that are happening while the rest of the country thinks that we can wait. I'm thinking so much about these legal residents of our country who are being detained and deported to federal detention facilities. Here's a couple names you might not have heard. A Black activist named Melissa, known as Melly Mel Atwell Holder, 31 years old, social media activist who's been a vocal critic of the People's Progressive Party of Guyana and the opposition, is currently being held in ICE custody in Louisiana. Her specific immigration status remains unclear. Another Indian man studying at Georgetown University named Badar Khan Sori. He was abducted by ICE from his apartment in Roslyn, which is just outside of DC in Arlington, Virginia. Homeland Security has made the gaslit accusation that he is tied to Hamas and accused him of anti-Semitism. This, as the terrorist Benjamin Netanyahu, who is an insult to anyone who suffered and died in the Holocaust in their entire history, is bombarding Gaza once again. The man who funded Hamas, the man who is a fascist leader like Donald Trump. And fascist leaders, as Timothy Snyder says in his book on tyranny, use the pretense of terrorism, real or imagined, to try to seize power. So they are doing this now. You, of course, know Mahmoud Khalil. I just want to read this excerpt from an AP article. This is Mahmoud Khalil, the Palestinian protester who broke no law, who was abducted from his apartment early last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, in New York, where his pregnant wife is living. He was in court today. It says Mahmoud Khalil, 30, a legal U.S. resident with no criminal record, sat alone next to an empty chair through a brief court session that dealt only with scheduling. His lawyer participated via video. Khalil swayed back and forth in his chair as he waited for the proceeding to begin in a windowless courtroom inside an isolated, low-slung immigration and customs enforcement detention complex, ringed by 2 rows of tall barbed wire fences and surrounded by pine forests. The facility is near the small town of Jenna, roughly 150 miles north of Louisiana's capital, Baton Rouge. This is where they are abducting and holding legal residents of this country who have committed no crimes. They, of course, have also rounded up people whose names and citizen status we don't even know and put them in an El Salvador prison and defied court orders to have the plane turned around. This is the territory that we are in while people tell us to wait. We're going to play a clip of some people telling us to wait in a minute, only for that purpose and because it's relevant to our guest today. But just before we do that, I want to shine a light on this beautiful woman who not nearly enough people know. Her name is Claudette Colvin. She is living today. She is 85 years old. And she's a woman whose story You don't know, but you darn well should know. I'm going to read from an excerpt from a story about Claudette Colvin. It says, major movements and revolutions in history are marked by big events, but are always comprised of smaller events, which are often overlooked. Claudette Colvin's story is one of these significant but overlooked events. On March 5th, 1955, Claudette Colvin, March 2nd, 1955, Claudette Colvin's life forever changed. She was charged with violating segregation laws, misconduct, and resisting arrest for refusing to go to the back of a bus. Now, you, of course, know the name Rosa Parks, but it wasn't until 9 months later that Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus, and the boycott that was contemplated when Colvin was arrested began. Rosa Parks was educated, older, lighter-skinned, and employed as a seamstress. Although her refusal to move was not directly planned, she was already part of the civil rights movement. She had been trained for civil disobedience by the NAACP. Claudette Colvin was not trained. She was just a conscientious young woman who had lived through the disgusting injustice and racism in her home state of Alabama, had witnessed a friend be executed for making a flirtatious gesture to a white person, and she lived it, and she was not willing to stand down. She refused to go to the back of the bus 9 months before Rosa Parks. You need to know her name. It is because of Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks and all those that came in their stead that we have the equality that we have now, that this disgusting administration is trying to erase in so many ways. So remember, it is what I did today is in honor of people like Claudette Colvin, whose names we should know, who should have never, ever been shadowed, forgotten, or erased. We sure are not going to shadow them or erase them here. And I hope if you're watching this, I had women approach me on Sunday because I shared that email from Common Defense. Because I'll be honest with you, I am a human being. I am not exempt from feeling, and it really kind of messed with me on Sunday. And I shared the sentiment with the crowd outside the Supreme Court when we marched from the Heritage Foundation with Cliff. And a woman came up to me named Cherish. I hope you're watching now, Cherish. And she said, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because too many women have gone through this and they have not spoken up. And because they have not, it has allowed this to perpetuate. And so I'm not willing to do that. And you telling me things like that, Cherish, remind me, and they're my validation, and it confirms my instinct that these things have to be corrected. It's a matter of respect, and it's a matter of truth, and we don't move forward without it. All right, so in just a minute, we're going to bring in Nathan Taylor from the Election Truth Alliance, and this is another thing that I was reluctant to play for you, but because there is a journalism angle to Lights On, I give you the full story. I, as a journalism student, am so frustrated more than anything when people don't do follow-up stories. So, and I'm so tired of talking about them, I'll be honest. But as you know, I issued a challenge to Midas Touch before 314 to promote it. I said it's never too late to do the right thing. And I got many, many messages from you telling me that your comments on Midas Touch channels were deleted, that you were not able to let them know about it, that you didn't hear anything about it from them. I got comments like this also that were very, I think, instructive. I'll just let you read it while it's up on the screen, why my commentary about Midas Touch is not bashing. It's not bashing. It's holding them to account. It's holding them to account. It says, it feels it needs to be pointed out how MTM is failing us at the moment. And many of them are failing us. It needs to be said. Imagine the power that MTM would have if enough of us commented to them directly and they changed their approach. Imagine the powerful statement that would have been made if the Dems walked out alongside Al Green. Imagine the power if MTM could inspire another 100,000 people to attend the 314 protest. Is it possible that the, quote, politeness you wish to be displayed is the attitude of the Dems that got us here in the first place? So that's just one of hundreds of comments that clearly describe the reason and understand the reason why I have been so relentless in calling them out. But in the spirit of following up, simply in the spirit of following up, here's the only thing that I heard from MTM brought to my attention in the wake of 314. And I'm playing it simply because of its relevance to our guest today, and because you saw all those beautiful images of the thousands of people that descended on Washington in honor of our veterans, for goodness sakes. And this is how that movement was reduced by this jealous man that I'm about to show you reluctantly. Here you go.
Think about the America that you want to wake up in 2 years or less at the midterms and beyond. And whether this administration, through its policies and procedures litigated through the courts, matches your ideal of what it means to be an American. And if it doesn't, and it shouldn't, then vote no in a binary way against anybody with an R next to their name come the midterms. Or as I'd like to say on a bumper sticker, I see all these other bumper stickers. 14th Amendment, Section 3, let's have a march. Great, I got another bumper sticker. Give me the House and the Senate at the midterms, and I'll give you an impeachment and a conviction and a removal. Let's put all our energy into that. That is going to get us where we want to go. So I was...
Okay. All right. I almost feel like that can just be without comment. I mean, I've not seen a 14th now bumper sticker, have you? Bumper sticker. Thousands of people in the streets, and he calls it a bumper sticker. Tell us who you are without telling us who you are. But on the theme of the midterms, thinking that we can wait. You heard Carlos say we can't wait. You heard Harry say we need to take action now. It is truly magical thinking to think that we can wait for a midterm election that is not going to be manipulated, and that we can wait for all the damage to be done between now and then and think that we can somehow undo it. My guest today, Nathan Taylor, and his organization ETA has been using the hashtag secure the midterms. This is an extremely serious conversation that needs to be had. Election integrity is not tinfoil hat thinking. The whole conversation was gaslit by MAGA in 2020 so that we could never, if we didn't have the courage like those of us in this space do, tackle the subject again. Well, we have the courage. We are tackling it. I'm going to play this little intro video that ETA put together, just kind of summarizing the issues in Pennsylvania. And then he's got some truly shocking analysis that he's about to present to you. So first off, here's that video.
Project now that Pennsylvania, the biggest battleground prize of the night, will go to former President Donald Trump. ABC News can now project
election threats, including a series of bomb threats.
Now moving ballots out of the Blair County garage over to the Blair County Convention Center. This happened when a precinct had a bomb scare. We've also received a report that Center County precinct as well as a Cameron County precinct are also dealing with bomb threats.
We've also been made aware that in the course of the last hour, multiple bomb threats have been called into polling locations and municipal buildings across Pennsylvania.
Cambria and the surrounding counties have been experiencing ballot tabulating issues today as many machines are unable to scan ballots. Some precincts are reportedly putting paper ballots in lockboxes to be scanned at a later time, and other precincts are reportedly telling voters to return later in the day once those machines are fixed.
County officials here have been hard at work all morning long trying to fix the voting issues that have run rampant throughout Cambria County all day long.
So say it again. Flash drives are not.
Flash drives that go to the machines are not synced up, and so they're having to get new flash drives out to all the machines.
Yeah,
that's what we've been told.
Cambria County?
Cambria County
that we know of. Yeah.
Okay.
And then he journeyed to Pennsylvania, where he spent like a month and a half campaigning for me in Pennsylvania. And he's a popular guy, and he was very effective. And he knows those computers better than anybody. All those computers, those vote counting computers. And we ended up winning Pennsylvania like in a landslide, so it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So thank you to Elon.
So please join me in welcoming back to Lights On my friend Nathan Taylor. Nathan, welcome back.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. You caught me off guard with the Medias Touch video, because now I'm already thinking about it, and I wanted to say you covered it. It's crazy to me that everyone's like, "Hey, we'll get them next time," but you don't address the problems of, is there a next time? So thank you so much for having me again. I'm very happy to be here.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And I know we have so many people in the chat and on this live stream right now that are so excited, and you held this for Lights On today. So let's just get right into it, Nathan. I know you want to give us a little introduction of how you got to where you are with these new analyses.
Yes. So just to clarify, I am one of 3 co-founders of the ETA. The other is Lily and Jive. Lily's in the chat right now, hyping everyone up. But this is something that I didn't do alone. So this organization, we founded it because we wanted answers. We wanted to investigate, and we were concerned that any one person would have a target on their back. So we said, let's do it together. And it's not just us 3. We have, at this point, 20 plus volunteers that are putting ridiculous time and effort and energy. Some of them that are public is another Nate and David Manasco. And just, these are people who, it's amazing that they have given us this effort. And they need more recognition as we go forward. So that's hopefully something we can do as we keep publishing new data. So we have Pennsylvania here.
Can I just jump in for a minute? And I just want to tell our Lights On viewers, there's a lot of overlap between 14th Now and ETA. And speaking of those unnamed people, they're absolute rock stars. I mentioned I didn't sleep, Josh didn't sleep, Cliff didn't sleep. There are also other unnamed superhero rock stars, many of them women behind the scenes making this happen. So shout out to all of them. You know who you are, and we love you and are so grateful for you.
Yes. So we have come here today to show the first of our Pennsylvania analysis. We will have a formal report released in the coming days. So this is your first sneak peek. I told Jessica, since she was the first one to give us the opportunity to talk about election concerns, that we would come to her first always when doing new things. So here we are, and we'll jump right into this. We don't want to spend too long. So here's the general analysis of why are we concerned about Pennsylvania. As you saw in those clips, they had a substantial amount of bomb threats. Almost half of the counties received bomb threats on election day. And the other concern as well is the direct quote from during a pre-inauguration rally mentioning vote counting computers in Pennsylvania. So this is our quick overview of, we are looking at 3 counties in this first analysis. And these are Philadelphia, which is the most populated county. And then we have, I've been coached on how to say these, but I'm probably going to say it wrong anyways. I think it's Allegheny, and then Erie County. So these are all very large population areas. So we wanted to look at these because these are important places where you would expect to see a strong liberal Democratic turnout. All right. And then here's our quick overview for drop-off analysis. If you're not familiar, please go check out Smart Elections. They were very aggressive about looking at drop-off, and they've done amazing work. So the way you read this graph, the bottom axis here is the counties throughout the state. And then the y-axis, the left side here, is the percentage of votes. So in this case, this is Pennsylvania for the 24 election. We're looking at the president, how many votes they got compared to the Senate, the senator candidate. So red is Trump in this case, and blue is Harris. So what we're seeing is the middle of this graph is a 0% line. That is how many votes each candidate's Senate race got. If you go above the line, you got more votes. If you go below the line, you got less votes. So the reason why we highlight drop-off is because drop-off, it doesn't truly tell you anything, but if you look at every county in the state and how consistently the drop-off is, that is a concern. You would expect to see variation. And in this case, in 24, we see some interesting consistency with Harris underperforming and Trump overperforming compared to the Senate races in some of these counties. The next slide actually breaks it down by vote type. This is something I don't think we've published this before in a type of analysis. I'll ask you questions here, Jessica. What immediately jumps out at you from the left graph, which is mail-in, to the right graph, which is Election Day?
Well, in the left graph, everything seems to be above the line. So tell us why that is.
Yeah. So what's concerning here is all of the drop-off seems to be occurring. The substantial drop-off, as I said, it's not crazy to overperform or underperform, but it should be a little more chaotic and random. And so we see the majority of the drop-off occurring for Harris on Election Day. And we see the majority of his overperformance as well for Trump on Election Day. So it's strange that mail-in would be so more normal and that Election Day would be far more consistent.
And this is an amalgamation of those 3 counties in Pennsylvania?
So these are all the counties, and then we have those 3 counties are involved as well. But they're not
this
actually...
is statewide. This is statewide.
Yes, this is the entire state.
Okay.
As a big picture.
Okay.
And so now we're going to jump into the actual analysis per county. So we're going to do a turnout analysis. Let me clarify. Pennsylvania votes by precinct. Clark County, Nevada, and Nevada as a whole, which our original analysis, our foundation is based upon, they voted by location, and we could pull the data by machine. Pennsylvania doesn't give us that level of data. They let us know by precinct. So this is a analysis that isn't as in-depth as Clark County. It's a different way of looking at it. You'll see some parallels for this, but for this overview, it's just going to be the turnout and some other analysis. So what is a turnout analysis? So what we're looking at is we're doing statistics, and we're looking at how many people showed up to vote in each precinct in these 3 counties. And then we're going to look at how each candidate performed as more people showed up to vote. It's the same analysis we saw in Clark County, just in a different way.
Okay.
All right. And to preface, some of you are familiar with this. This is the concept of a Russian tail. It's just a concern that Roman Udot, I believe a Russian statistician or data analyst, brought up for some of their elections. This was the election to allow President Putin at the time to run for additional terms. And so Roman Udot, had highlighted concerns of potential manipulation. And he highlights that with this Russian tail concept of, instead of it being one group of voting, you see it stretch out. And this may be an indication of fraud. So if we go to the next slides here, we kind of look at this. We've recreated a similar analysis using turnout. And this is Philadelphia. This is mail-in on the left and the presidential race on the right. This is just the presidential race in this case. So the way you read this, the bottom axis is percentage of turnout. It's from 0, meaning no one showed up to vote, to 100%, meaning every person registered in their precinct showed up to vote. Obviously, we really only ever get up to maybe 70% for Election Day, because not 100% of the people who are registered in the county show up to vote, or precinct show up to vote. And then the y-axis is the amount of votes that they got. So the way we're looking here is mail-in on the left. We see Harris as a blue line, and we see Trump as a red-orange line. And so what is distinctly noticeable here is we see, although both candidates get different amounts of votes, they are somewhat consistent in the shape from both parties, because we have a 2-party system. In this case, they split the votes. On the right is Election Day. So left is mail-in. We don't see anything noticeably concerning for mail-in on the left. In this case, we see that both parties are similar in their shape of distribution for how many people showed up to vote and how many votes they got. On the right, and the reason why we kind of highlight this, and it's concerning, and we will publish more of our findings with our audit report, and we'll kind of go into the specifics, is on the right, we see that after a certain percentage of voter turnout is hit, in this case, Trump begins to grow in votes over Harris. And so this is an interesting way to look at it. It's almost equivalent to a vote change. And we want to highlight this because as we get deeper into this analysis, if something is changing the votes as turnout is increasing, what could cause that? So if you go to the next slide here, we're highlighting that shift as turnout increases. All right, now we're going to get into a little more of the details. I know we only have 10 minutes or so. So this is Allegheny County. This is mail-in. What we want to highlight here is this is that turnout analysis. On the left, we're looking at what the percentage of votes the candidate got compared to the amount of votes cast. So what we see with mail-in is it doesn't matter how many votes are cast, you are generally a straight line for both candidates. In this case, Harris has more votes. She's at a higher percentage. On the right, this is that turnout analysis. We talked about it in a different way. So what's interesting here is, as we said, we see that straight line of, although turnout increases, and in this case, mail-in, I think it was only 0 to 40% or so of the actual votes were mail-in, 45%. So a little less than half of all the votes cast are mail-in. So we see it's a straight line. Now, if we go to the next slide, this is where it gets concerning. This is one of the 3 counties. What we see here for election day, it's concerning because we see a concern as the amount of votes increase, or as more people turned up the vote in Allegheny County for election day, we see a change occur. On the left, we see it after a certain amount of votes, the Republican Party begins to grow in the percentage of votes they get. On the right, we see it as these diagonal lines. So you'll notice as more people showed up to vote, the Republicans grew in percentage and the Democrats decreased in the amount of votes they got. This is concerning. We have a few theories on what would cause this. The problem is we can't think of any other theories right now for what would cause this that would be more normal. Our concern is this could be caused by vote manipulation, changing votes at the tabulation level. It's the same concern we saw in Clark County. As you saw in mail-in, you didn't see a correlation for voter turnout changing the amount of votes people got. But in election day, we see it here in Allegheny County.
And the theory is that as you're seeing these patterns like radically shift on these graphs, that the possibility, the theory that you're contemplating is that at some point during election day, something was done to manipulate the vote count, whether it was a USB, whether it was through a Starlink connection, which, by the way, is also not conspiracy. We've had actual election security experts on this program explain why our elections are still not secure, why there are internet connections in places that there should not be, why passwords from Dominion voting machines were printed all over the place. It's in court documents how the Stop the Steal people in 2020 had access to software. None of this is conspiracy theory. It is literally in court documents and verified by election security experts. So, to speculate that something may be awry causing these patterns is not conspiracy. There is abundant evidence out there that we didn't do our due diligence to make sure that something was not done to interfere.
The main concern is there's only one way to know truly what's going on here, and that is to do targeted audits of the actual votes cast, the paper ballots. That is the only way to really know. And so we can have all of this evidence with statistical analysis, and our next steps as well will be, as I said, we'll be publishing this formally, and then we're doing more analysis. We're looking at the demographic of voters in these areas. We're doing the same thing we did for Clark County. And the bottom line up front is, if this did happen, if there was manipulation, then we need audits to make sure it didn't happen, or else the midterms could be compromised. The next presidential election could be compromised. So that is why we have a petition. It's in the description of this live stream, I believe. So we are petitioning the Pennsylvania government, the federal or the state government in this case, the governor, the secretary of state, the attorney general. We're bringing attention to them that we need audits. And so it gets easier. And the secretary of state, I believe, specifically has authority and power to do audits and do investigations. The governor less so, but they have direct connection with the rest of the state.
Yeah, the link is in the description of this video. Before, when I checked it earlier, it was like 2,000 and some. Let's get it by the time this video is shared over the next few days, let's get this well over 20,000, 30,000, 40, just share this everywhere, amplify it, get that petition signed. The description has the link, click on it, sign that petition. We need thousands of signatures to demand that election hygiene be conducted. My God almighty.
Yes, and we have a few other counties we'll highlight real quick. It's the same concern, it's just in different ways.
Okay.
And so the main focus with Allegheny, if you go to the next slide, we checked a few other races, and it's not just the presidential race. If manipulation occurred here and the tabulation machines or whatever it is that is compromised, we see it in other down-ballot races, partisan down-ballot races. What's concerning is we've not been able to find other substantial races that really don't show this. The nonpartisan and single candidate races look that straight line. They're consistent. They don't see change. But these races are smaller, and they're harder to really say are accurate when comparing it. But that's the concern, is we've not been able to find races that don't have election day concerns, but then mail-in looks normal. So, and if you go to the next slides here, we'll go to look at the other ones. It's Erie County, same thing. Mail-in looks good. Next slide. Election day has the same concern at a different level. You're seeing that as more people show up to vote, the Republican Party begins to grow in the amount of votes they got. And then you go to the next slide. Here's Philadelphia. This is the largest county in the state. So you'll notice it's more full. This is a more full amount of votes. They have more votes. They have more places to look at, more precincts. But nonetheless, mail-in shows a more expected non-correlation of vote. Yeah, the turnout doesn't change. The candidates kind of stay in their groupings and then move to the right. And then the next slide. I mean, this one's very aggressive. This one is concerningly strong, where we see both candidates start off. In this case, the Democrats start off at a closer 80% average or so. And then the Republicans, as more people showed up to vote, as more votes were cast, the Republicans gained a higher percentage of votes in these precincts. So in precincts where more people voted, the Republican Party got a larger percentage of the votes. That doesn't really make sense.
So
it doesn't
clear,
match.
yeah, this is for both the presidential and the down ballot partisan races, meaning that McCormick's win over Bob Casey, there was possible manipulation and suggested manipulation by this data that you're seeing in Philadelphia.
Yes, this occurred all the way down the ticket in these counties, which is interesting because the drop-off analysis wouldn't specifically catch this per county. That's why we looked at the state as a whole, and we saw concerns across many counties. But in these few counties, you wouldn't have caught this with a drop-off analysis because there's no other race to compare it to if all races were potentially manipulated. And I want to highlight that we have another video clip on the ETA's YouTube channel that talks about a specific quote. And that quote is concerning now with this knowledge. And it was something along the lines of having a secret with, I think, Speaker Mike Johnson, and Trump had said that, hey, we're doing really well in these other races, and we have a secret, and I'll tell you about it after the election. And I'm
that was during that Nazi rally, the first Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden before the election.
Right. And my concern is, what was that secret?
Yeah.
Was it manipulation of other races and not just the presidential race? So these are concerns we want addressed. That's why we want audits. That's why we're fighting. That's why we have a petition. And that's why we're going to continue to publish data like this as we go forward, and not just in Pennsylvania. We have more data. We have more analysis for places we haven't unveiled yet, because one, it takes us a while to validate. That's why it's taken us a little longer than we expected for our Pennsylvania analysis, is we want to make sure these concerns are real and that this data can be reproduced. So that is why we will continue.
I will just tell our viewers, I asked Nathan last night, I said, from a chain of custody perspective, can you personally, Nathan, not your team, but you personally vouch for these graphs, these analysis, what you're showing us being a byproduct of the actual publicly available election data in these counties? And he said, yes, I can both personally vouch for it, and it has been cross-checked by members of our team and multiple others, in your ETA organization. Multiple people, including Nathan himself, can vouch for this data being accurate.
Yes. And in this case, what's unique about how we're doing data analysis going forward is the Clark County analysis. It was a combination of me, Jive, David, ultimately Nate, and others who kind of stepped forward and did it together. This time around, Pennsylvania was done by data analysts in ETA, independent of me. I didn't do the initial analysis for this, but I did replicate it, and then I'm presenting it.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Well, I encourage everybody to go to electiontruithalliance.org
Yeah, we
to
have
see
a
the
final slide here.
full scope of their work. And I'll let you summarize this. Go ahead, Nate.
There you go. Yep. So as I said, key takeaways is drop-off is concerning across the state at large. And then as we looked at specific counties, we are seeing concerns of potential manipulation with voter turnout showing the Republicans gaining in vote. It doesn't make sense. And so we want an audit of the paper trails. So sign our petition. You can go to the next slide, and that'll kind of be my conclusion here is reach out. That's the whole point. Sign the petition, call your representatives, send them emails. We'll also be releasing a draft letter and a list of state officials that you can reach out to, because the only way we're going to get answers is if enough people care to get us these answers.
Yeah, and really, I just want to remind our viewers, you are picking up the job that law enforcement should be doing. This should not be the work of a private organization. This is the work of law enforcement and state agencies to do. So we're really, just like we're doing at 14th now with the protests, picking up the work that our elected representatives should be doing and reclaiming our power. This is a real opportunity for you to do that. We will not let democracy die on our watch. This is all part of this fight. How can we have a functioning democracy if we do not even know if the people in power have been legitimately elected? And for God's sakes, we have enough red flags and glaring alarm bells leading up to this election that we need to make sure we do our due diligence.
And the final thing is, as we proceed forward with doing more analysis in the ETA, as this gets bigger and spreads, as I've told people before, for those donating to us, we've assembled a legal team, and we are making teams dedicated to each of the counties and each of the states that we're going to bring concerns to. That is a expensive and time-consuming process, and it's almost a process of last resort because, as I said, if the states themselves cared and the secretaries of state came forward, we wouldn't need to sue a county to gain access to the paper ballots. It could be far easier and more transparent. So that's why we ask, if nothing else, spread the word and bring attention to this. But we will sue if we have to in places where we are concerned.
Yeah, and just to be clear, for them to have legal standing in the lawsuits that really need to be brought, they have to be able to show that the data is backed up by the paper ballots, that you see a contradiction in the data that came out from the election versus the actual evidence of how people voted. And the only way to do that is to get those paper ballots, which is why it's so important for you to sign and share that petition that we linked to.
Yes, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Nate. Always a pleasure to have you on. I wish you guys the very best.
Thank you. Good luck.
So thank you everybody so much for being with me today. As I mentioned, we've got some major protests coming up. D-Day, June 6th. In the meantime, a lot is happening. Here's some things that I have on my calendar right now. March 30th, Cliff Cash is spearheading another major media protest in Atlanta at the CNN headquarters, in New York at Fox News, in DC, where we already were, at MSNBC, CNN, and Fox, and in Boca Raton, Florida, at Newsmax, March 30th. It's a Sunday. Put it on your calendar. If you live near any one of those locations, please join Cliff in that media protest. We got coverage, but not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. They need to start reporting on what we are doing on the ground. Rachel Maddow, next time you report on us, please properly credit who's doing it. And so we're going to continue those movements. And Cliff is not done on March 30th. This is just the next one. We promised when we showed up there on March 15th that we were going to keep this going until they started paying attention. So we will keep that pressure on for sure. The other thing that I have on my calendar right now is April 5th. This is a 50-51 led protest, 50 state, 50 protests going on around the country. I know it's already taken on many different names and a lot of different organizations have been involved. I will most certainly be involved in one of those protests. Show up. Get yourself to Washington, D.C. or your state capital on April 5th. Show up in numbers too big to ignore. Another thing that has been put on my radar is May Day. This one's being called May Day, and I need to look more into it. So I promise to follow up more with you and hopefully the organizers themselves in coming weeks. But there is a protest planned for May 1st, a sort of occupation of the National Mall to demand, very much in line with our goals at 14th Now, to demand the impeachment and removal of Donald J. Trump and his illegal administration, not leaving until that is done. So I'm going to be looking more into that, hopefully sharing more of that with you. That is scheduled to begin on May 1st. It's called May Day. All right, everybody, those are a few things. You know, this is not a podcast. I don't even care about having a podcast. I'll be honest with you. I have a podcast because we're living in a time in history when we cannot afford to be silent. I have to have a way to share my voice with you. This is the home of action. Please support this action movement platform by subscribing to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel where you're watching this. I want to thank you all again so much. And again, I took the credit today because the credit is not just mine, it is yours. You made NowDC happen. You made that Veterans March happen. You funded it. You were there for it. It is yours. So thank you so much. If you want to contribute to me personally in the work that I do, you can do that at thejessicadenson.com/donate, thejessicadenson.com/donate. You can also buy my merch at the Jessica Denson merch site. You can do it at thejessicadenson.com. There's a link in one of our wonderful viewers there that I got to meet, of the many of you that I got to meet and hug and take pictures with. Thank you all so much. It was really beyond an honor. Many of you brought me to tears. I can't explain how, I don't have words for how touched and moved I was to meet each and every one of you. So until next time, thank you so much. You are the reason I'm doing this. We are the flood. We are going to take back our country, and we have no time to waste. Have a wonderful weekend. And as always, let your light shine.